Well, actually, I'll turn on the live transcript too for people who might want that. I think I did. Oops, there we go. Good morning and welcome. This is the presentation about the CalWORKs legal update. Going to talk about various changes and updates in the world of CalWORKs that have happened over the last year. My name is Stephen Goldberg. I am Regional Counsel for Legal Services of Northern California, which is the federally funded legal aid program that covers 23 Northern California counties. And I'm also happy to present to this group. I've been doing this for several years now, and I'm really happy to be a part of this group, and I hope I am helpful for this group as a resource. And this group has been very helpful for me too on a number of things, so I'm really happy to do this. So let me jump in. I need to share my screen. So give me a moment. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is actually a change that happened last year, but is still being implemented in many ways, and the counties are still working out how to do it. And that is the changes in welfare to work for higher education in SB 1232. And I also wanted to talk about this because it affects so much of the work that you're doing. This is going to be a pretty high-level overview of SB 1232 because I know there's another session about that this afternoon for people who want a deeper dive into it. But in general, SB 1232 caused a lot of changes for education as a welfare to work activity in publicly funded post-secondary education. And the highlights are that first, the county can no longer deny higher education as a welfare to work activity. Before, the counties would, take a request for welfare for education as a welfare to work activity and would make a determination, is this the best way for somebody to achieve self-sufficiency? Are there other things they should be able to do? And the county was empowered to say, no, I don't think you should go to school. You should go work at Walmart instead. And that is no longer the case. If somebody wants higher education to be their welfare to work activity, the county must now allow them to do it. And for folks who are not at the point that they can begin higher education because they don't have a high school diploma, previous law is that the county is always required to at least offer and to allow, if somebody wants it, somebody to go to high school or to do a high school equivalency program to get a GED. And so putting those two things together, anybody who wants education as their welfare to work activity should be able to do that now. Second, for people who are enrolled in higher education as their welfare to work activity, they can now count 3 hours of study time for every class unit. Next, people who are considered to be full-time enrolled by the college are considered to automatically be meeting their welfare to work requirements. No more will people need to find 2 hours of some other activity to make up for the fact that they only had 12 units, that they were taking 12 units and that wasn't enough to quite make their 30 hours. No more of that. And the county can no longer require people to do job search if they are enrolled in higher education. So somebody comes in, does their welfare to work appraisal, and after that, in the general flow is that somebody does 4 weeks of job search. That is no longer true for higher education. If someone is in higher education, the county can no longer require that 4 weeks of job search. And although the counties can still do the assessment, that's the OCAT, that online assessment tool that they require for everybody, the counties can only do it to identify barriers to self-sufficiency. They cannot use the assessment to deny higher education. And so they can use it to identify barrier removal services, but the results of the OCAT cannot be used for the county to deny higher education. And the final big change is the standard supportive services payment. This is really neat. For folks who are in semesters, they will get $500 for full-time, $250 for being part-time, as a standard supportive services payment. No more needing to submit every syllabus of every class to show which classes are required. No more needing to find the exact cost of books, and that's the exact cost that people will be reimbursed. No more submitting that to the county and crossing your fingers that the payment will come before the semester starts, so that folks can actually buy their books. Now, if folks are enrolled and are in good standing, they get this standard supportive services payment. For folks who are in quarter system, it's $350 for a full-time student and $175 for part-time students. Got the question yesterday about what happens for the summer term, and that depends on how the school classifies it. If the school classifies it as the equivalent of a quarter, then they would get the quarter rate. If the school classifies it as the equivalent of a semester, because the classes are so compressed and it actually is the same amount of work as a semester, then they should get the semester rate. And if somebody's actual expenses for their education are higher than the standard supportive services payment, then they can ask for an amount above that standard payment. But for that, people will need to submit proof. That's when they'll need to submit receipts or proof of the amount above the standard supportive services payment that they need to pay. If there is no change in enrollment, there is no new welfare to work plan that is required. If there is a change, the county has to provide a new welfare to work plan at least 30 days before the beginning of the term. And if the county does not provide that new welfare to work plan, then they have to pay the supportive services. This has been an issue with the counties. I think a couple of the county policies we've looked at have this wrong. I think part of the problem is, at least the counties thought it was unclear in the first all county letter that came out, and there is an errata to the all county letter that came out that clarifies this, and I'm not sure how many counties noticed the errata. So I'm hoping this isn't a problem, but we have actually had a couple of clients where it has been a problem. So I think that may be an issue to watch out for. One last thing I want to flag about higher education is AB 1326, which is a requirement that the counties designate at least one employee as a staff liaison to serve as a point of contact for the community colleges. And for any institution of public education located in the county. And they have to provide information and about programs and services that may be available to students. CDSS is required to develop protocols about that. And they have, the only reason I know about it is because I got invited to a work group about it. And it looks like they're trying to be pretty detailed about it. I got at least 5 meetings for this work group that I probably am not going to be able to do. And I'm hoping some community college folks have been invited to that. If not, we should talk to DSS about that, because this affects all of you directly. And hold on a moment, there is something in the chat that I need to see what it is. Comment from Vicky. If the participant doesn't have supportive services required to meet their welfare to work and meet satisfactory progress, don't they automatically have good cause? Yes, that is correct. If the county does not provide supportive services as required, that is automatically good cause for not participating. So someone can't be sanctioned if they don't quite meet satisfactory progress. And the reason is that the county has not provided supportive services. I will give one more note here that I didn't put on the slide, and that is about determining satisfactory progress. One other change that 1232 made is that satisfactory progress is determined by the school and not by the county. So if the school determines that somebody is making satisfactory progress, then they're fine. They cannot be sanctioned for that. And DSS decided to do this in the easiest way possible, which is if the school is allowing somebody to enroll for the term, then the school must have determined that they are making satisfactory progress, and that is enough. And the county must determine that they are making satisfactory progress regardless of what they're doing. So let me pause here for a second because this is such an important area for all of you, and I'll take questions at the end too. But does anybody have any questions about SB 1232 and implementation of that?
I do. I have a quick question. So if a client isn't in school, but they want to go to school at the time of appraisal, do they still have to go to job search first and then enroll in school?
No. If they are enrolled in school, they should not have to do job search.
No, what if they're not enrolled, but they express that they want to go to school? Do they still have to do job search?
Probably. If they're not enrolled yet, then I think the county can require job search.
But the county cannot stop them from enrolling, right?
No, they can't.
Okay.
And then once enrolled, the county has to allow it as their welfare to work activity.
So they don't have to work then?
If they are enrolled full-time, then that is considered meeting their minimum welfare to work participation requirements. If they're not enrolled full-time, then they may very well need some other hours to get to their minimum required.
Okay, thank you.
And I see another question in the chat. Give me a moment here. And Damaris, I see you. Give me one moment. There seems to be confusion on when a student should be getting their advance payment. I understand that it is at least 10 days prior. Yes, that is correct, Marta. It has to be at least 10 days prior to the beginning of the semester. If the county is able to do it sooner than that, that's great. But that is what they have to do. They have 10 days to process the request and get that paid. And again, if the county can do it faster than that, that's great. And let me take this this other one in the chat. Will SB 1232 implementation ever address non-credit classes that count as hours but not as credit units? We are hoping so. There is a cleanup bill that is pending now that will address that. One of the things it does is to address that oversight. So we are hopeful if that gets through the legislature that cleanup will happen. Damaris.
Hello, thank you for all the information. I am actually newer to the CalWORKs family, so bear with me, y'all. This is like I know people say there's no dumb question and all that stuff, but you might think it's a dumb question and you're in the back of your mind or whatever. So thank you for your patience. I'm wondering, because you said about the full-time enrollment, the meeting the welfare to work participation requirements. Does this mean that over the breaks, okay, so two-part question. Some students take, 8-week courses. And so they might have one 3-unit 8-week course and then do the next 8-week courses. They'll take the rest of their full-time unit load for the semester. Does that mean they still have to do extra hours during that first part of the first 8 weeks?
It depends whether the institution calls them full-time enrolled or not.
Okay.
If the institution calls them full-time enrolled, then no, they don't have to do anything else. If not, then possibly if the amount of time that they're spending in school, that is the time in classroom and plus the 3 hours study time per unit, does not meet their minimum number of hours, then they would have to do something else to make up the difference.
Okay. And then just also does that mean that over the spring break, and other like breaks in general, they don't need to do those extra hours, like, or the break activities because they're full time during the semester?
I think if they're not enrolled during the summer, unfortunately, there will have to be bridging activities. I don't think bridging activities have gone away.
Or I mean, like not necessarily the summer, like let's say they are enrolled in the summer and there's no break normally like during the summer, I think. I guess like within the semester for spring break, I think they normally do have to do some activities sometimes, right?
For 1 week, I've never seen anybody get into trouble.
Okay.
And
But
remember also that the hours are calculated, averaged out over the month. So if your student is doing 60 hours the first week, the second week, and the third week of the month that you have spring break, she will have met her minimum participation for that month.
Okay.
So the worker shouldn't be assigning a bridging activity for a short break like that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's more like the longer breaks, right? Like the winter break.
Yeah, summer too. It depends on the institution on how their summer semester runs. At OCC, we have, I want to say 4 or 5 different periods in the summertime. So it just depends because you know that instruction needs to meet the U.S. Department of Education's requirements on the definition of a credit hour. That's how all the funding happens. So maybe a 4-unit class might be 8 weeks in summer at 13 hours of instruction per week, whereas a 1-unit counseling class would be maybe 4-week sessions. So as coordinators, especially if your institution has several different periods, my suggestion is always to make the job easier for your county partners and sort of have it figured out in advance so that your students aren't just routinely being put into an activity. So for summer, remember too, like if in August, your student is enrolled in summer and she has 2 weeks in the beginning of the month she's participating, and then 1 week at the end of the month for the fall semester for the county's purposes and the work participation rates, that all is inclusive in 1 month.
Okay.
I hate math.
It's a part of the job. But thank you, Vicki, for explaining a little bit. Again, I am new, so still trying to get the gist of some of these things. Thank you.
And I see several requests for the PowerPoint in the chat. Yes, I will figure out how to get that to people. I'll figure out who I need to send it to and make sure that gets out to people. Vicki, your hand was up for something else.
This is probably not the right venue, but I really think that we should address at a next advocates meeting or something about this whole not starting in the beginning of the semester. You know, I think that's a real issue that could happen. Right now, we're only 1 month shy of the semester ending, and I'm onboarding 2 students who have been borrowing books and paying to have downloads done. And Orange County, I'm fairly sure, even at this late date, is still intending on issuing the standard payment. So I think for me, my belief is for a CalWORKs student, regardless of when they qualify in the semester, for the semester.
That's great if Orange County is willing to do that. That's wonderful. I've got some other stuff that I would like to cover, and I saw a question in the chat already about the next thing that I'm going to cover. So I'm going to move on, and hopefully, I think there'll be some time at the end if people have more questions that include SB 1232. The next thing I want to talk about is the changes to the time on aid clock. 2 very important changes. The first is that the time on aid clock increases to 60 months just 3 days from now on May 1st, 2022. The time on aid clock increases from 48 months to 60 months. And the nice thing about this is people whose families are still on CalWORKs. So for example, parents who had timed out, but they are still receiving benefits for their kids should automatically be re-added to the assistance unit. They should not have to reapply. You might find some older guidance from DSS that said that everybody had to reapply. And last legislative term, there was legislation passed that required DSS to re-add everybody who is still part of an assistance unit. So that's a really important thing. The second thing is that 24-month clock that I'm sure confused the heck out of everybody is gone as of 3 days from now. We don't have to worry about the 24-month clock anymore. And really what's most important for all of you is it means you had to deal with whether something qualified as vocational education, so they could get their 12 months of vocational education without the 24-month clock starting. And then the 24-month clock started, and then you had to deal with extenders of the 24-month clock. No more. All of that is gone. We shouldn't have to worry about whether something qualifies as vocational education. The state will for their federal reporting, but that's not your problem anymore. It's not the recipient's problem anymore. The 24-month clock and everything that went with it is gone. What bill is the time clock change associated with? I think it was in the budget bill last year. I'd have to look up the exact number. I'm not sure of it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was something that was in last year's budget. Next thing I want to talk about is computers and the new welfare department computer system called CalSAWS. And CalSAWS is here for a number of your counties. The 38 counties that use the C4 computer system already have it. Los Angeles already has it. And it is the new system that the counties are using to run all of their programs. What comes along with CalSAWS is a new online portal called Benefits Cal. And that is replacing C4 Yourself, and that is replacing YBN, Your Benefits Now. And I see a question in the chat. I'll double back to that in a second, but I do see it. So Benefits Cal is a new way for people to be able to apply online. And at this point, it already allows people to do their SAR 7s and annual recertifications online. There should be some other stuff coming, hopefully by the beginning of next year. It will include applying for homeless assistance, and it will include applying for supportive services, hopefully, cross our fingers. In the other 18 counties that use the CalWin computer system, that transition has not started yet. The reason is the CalSAWS system kernel is really an extension and updating of the C4 and leader systems. And so the transition to the new system was much easier in those counties. For the CalWin counties, it is a completely new system to them. And so the folks who are doing the implementation decided to do them later and to do those over a staggered rollout over a 2-year period. And so as of now, the first counties that go on to CalSAWS that are CalWin counties are scheduled to do so in October of 2022. Yolo, Placer are in the first wave. Solano, I think, is 1 month later. And then there's going to be a pretty big break while they look at lessons learned and figure out what they need to fix. And then they'll do staggered the rest of the counties. As the counties transition to CalSAWS, those counties will then be using Benefits Cal instead of the CalSAWS, the CalWin online portal. For people who are applying just for CalFresh, the getcalfresh.org will continue until the CalSAWS system is entirely rolled out. At this point, the thing that just happened last week was Los Angeles turned on the Benefits Cal system just last week. There was a delay for them, but that should be in place now. And it should be hopefully working now. I haven't heard any complaints or anything about problems with Benefits Cal in Los Angeles replacing the Your Benefits Now system. Now, one thing that is not currently in Benefits Cal is the CBO functionality. They just didn't do it. It is something that they are working on now, and that we hope will be rolled out in September. Part of that is a new system to designate authorized representatives for applications only, which is to allow CBOs to more directly help folks with applications and with other stuff. The initial wave is going to be light on CalWORKs stuff. It will have on the dashboard whether the status of somebody's CalWORKs application, but that's it. They are having some issues about what they think they can release to people. I don't know why, but they are. And they decided not to hold up the release for everybody else. And while they work out their issues for CalWORKs. For your purposes, I think what you will need to do is sign up as a CBO in order to get that access similar to what you had in Your Benefits Now and in See for Yourself. Each individual county is doing the signups for a CBO. So for example, if you have if you work at a college that serves students in multiple counties, you will need to ask to be designated as a CBO in each of those counties that you have students. But there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. I think the way the system is being denied, I checked with somebody yesterday after this presentation yesterday and made sure that part of the intention of this is to give the community colleges access like they had before. So it's going to be a bit annoying that you're going to have to request that access from the counties, but hopefully it won't be a difficult thing to get. And I see a question in the chat from Yolanda. Did the 3-month limitation on supervised job search go away too? Yes, it did. Again, that was a 24-month time clock issue dealing with what could be federally counted. And so there is no longer that limitation because the problem was after the 3 months of supervised job search, the 24-month time clock would begin to run. The 24-month time clock no longer exists. And so it is no longer an issue. And I see a comment from Vicky about the 60-month time on aid, that there's a best practice to reach out to the CARE program to check if for parenting students are TANF-only recipients, and if so, and because they are timed out, they should be brought back into CalWORKs automatically. And that is true. And I guess the question is, how good are the counties going to be about actually getting those people back on, or whether we're going to need to do some advocacy with the counties to make sure people are in fact re-added without needing to do anything, without needing to reapply. But for folks whose entire case ended, but they are eligible now, those folks will need to reapply. Vicki, I see your hand up. Do you have another question or comment? No.
Nope.
I want to flag a couple changes in a program called the Housing Support Program. And this is a program that provides various housing stabilization services to CalWORKs recipients, including rent payments for new housing. It can be payments to stay in place. It can be lots of other things, work on credit reports or assisting with finding housing or various other things. And Diego, I see your comment. I'll come back in a second. Now, the change to the housing support program is that it is now available to pay back rent and remain in place. And it is also now available when people get a notice to pay rent or quit, a notice to quit, or before that, if housing is defined as unstable. And so previously, someone had to actually be standing on the street homeless to be eligible for the housing support program under the state's policy, and legislation last year fixed that and made that no longer the case, which is really nice. Every county does their housing support program differently. And so what somebody will get will be different in each county. If you want to know what your county's policy is, they're required to have a written policy, which is approved by the state for how they operate the program. So you can refer people that way. It is a county option. Almost every county has it, but there are a few that don't. And so if you may work in a county that doesn't offer housing support program, that is possible. And the question from Diego is explanation of requesting to be a CBO for multiple counties. Diego, what's going to happen starting in September when the new functionality comes out for Benefits Cal and allowing CBOs to get access to information in Benefits Cal, each CBO, which would include the community colleges, will need to make a request to each county that they want access to Benefits Cal from. And hopefully there will be a form that will be an easy way to make that request. That form doesn't exist yet, but I think there will be a form. And that's, I mean, at this point, that's all the information we have because it is still being developed. But I hope that's helpful.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
And for folks who are in CalWIN counties, the 18 CalWIN counties don't need to worry about this until the county that you're working in transitions to CalSAWS and Benefits Cal. Nothing will change with your My Benefits CalWIN access if you have that until they transition to CalSAWS and Benefits Cal. There are some changes with the homeless assistance program as well. This is the program that provides either temporary temporary housing, hotel vouchers, and payment for hotels up to 16 days, and assistance with permanent housing by providing security deposits and last month's rent. There are some changes that are really good for recipients of homeless assistance, and I'm not going to flag them because they are all on hold until CalSAWS is completely implemented in all of the counties. So we're not going to see those beneficial changes until sometime in 2024 when CalSAWS is completely rolled out. So just a flag that those good things are coming, and if you see them, they're not implemented yet. So an issue that has been a big problem for a lot of folks is losing their benefits because of electronic theft. And this can be either skimming, that is some version of electronic theft from a point of sale machine or from an ATM machine, or scamming, which is somebody is tricked into giving out their password and then their benefits are stolen. There is a process that for requesting replacement of those benefits. The reason I'm flagging it is there is a new court case which ended some of DSS's strange restrictions on people being able to get this done. And there's legislation that is pending now that will codify those things, but DSS already issued a letter. It's ACL 2133 implementing the result of that lawsuit. But the general rule is someone must report the loss of their benefits within 10 days of the electronic theft. If they don't, they're out of luck. So if somebody comes to you and says, my benefits disappeared and I don't know why, you can take a wild guess that it was skimmed or scammed, and those folks need to know to report that theft immediately, because if they don't report it within 10 days, they lose their chance to get their benefits replaced. And I see, Yolanda, how quickly benefits must be restored. I'm getting that. I'll get there, I promise. Once the report is made, then the recipient has to complete the EBT 2259 form. It's a special form that's on the DSS website within 90 days of the electronic theft. Once that EBT 2259 form is submitted, there is an initial review done by the EBT contractor, FIS. And they look at their whatever information they have. And if they agree that the benefits were properly stolen, then they will say to replace them. If FIS does not approve replacing the benefits, then the county reviews the case and makes a determination whether the benefits should be replaced or not. The county has 10 days to make that determination. They must inform the recipient with a notice of action about that determination. So if they deny replacement for some reason, there is the right to request an administrative hearing, but that determination must be made within 10 days and the replacement has to be made within 10 days. It's not just the determination, but the replacement has to be done within 10 days. Nice thing is there is no longer a requirement to file a police report. It's probably a good idea to report it to the police anyway, and have it just in case somebody questions it, but there is no longer the police report requirement. There is still a limit for replacement of electronically stolen benefits, no more than twice in a 6-month period. So if somebody is unfortunate enough to have their benefits electronically stolen a third time in a 6-month period, they are out of luck. Yolanda asks, is the county required to give the client the form? Yes, they should. If there is the report of the loss of benefits, the county should give the form. But if somebody comes to you about it, you can give them the form too. It's on the DSS website under the forms section. It's the EBT 2259. But yes, the county should provide that form to people. A couple of new things about verification. A pregnant person only applicant, if they cannot provide medical verification of pregnancy, they can submit a sworn statement to verify pregnancy for CalWORKs and get the pregnant person only special needs payment. They have to provide medical verification within 30 days, and there's good cause for that time extension. But no longer must somebody wait to get the medical verification from their doctor to apply for and receive CalWORKs. They can submit a sworn statement now and get the pregnant person only supplement and be granted as a pregnant person only. This second thing about verbal attestation is something that the counties have been doing because of COVID, but legislation now makes it permanent. People can now sign a CalWORKs application by oral attestation if the applicant cannot provide a physical signature, or if the county cannot accept an electronic or telephonic signature. So except for homeless assistance, the applicant does have to submit a physical signature within 30 days. And the county should mail the forms to the applicant to get the physical signature, but at least they can move forward without providing a physical signature now. Like I said, this was something the county started doing because of COVID and were authorized to do because of the COVID office closures, but is now a permanent thing. And for photo identification, CalWORKs applicants can present photo identification virtually now and can present it during a video conference, so they can show it on a screen or something, and no longer need to get to the office to submit a copy in person. They can scan it and email it or present it during a video conference. And let me flag one more thing about semi-annual reporting that should have been on here. My apologies. There's a change, a positive change for clients about semi-annual reporting and annual recertifications. The law was until last year that someone could not submit their SAR 7 until the beginning of the report month. That if somebody submitted their SAR 7 before the beginning of the report month, that it was early and the county would reject it, and people had to resubmit it once the report month had started. That is no longer the case. Now the county must accept SAR 7s that are submitted early. It does change the way that reporting is done a little bit, and it's been really confusing for counties because there's been 2 sets of questions and answers that have come out about this already. But the basic for you is that somebody should not get into trouble because they submit their SAR 7 or annual recertification before the reporting month. They can submit it early now, and that should be okay. There could be an issue about what they've reported and not quite reporting for the right time period, but at least they won't be automatically kicked out because they submitted it early, because they submitted their SAR 7 or annual recertification early. So this is supposed to be a benefit to clients, and I think it will be over time, even though it has caused some confusion in the short term. Let me pause here if people have questions. I do have a couple of other things I could talk about, but I didn't include them in the PowerPoint because I wanted to encourage discussion and questions if people have those. Yes, Yolanda.
Quick question, just back to that form that clients are supposed to fill out. I just have a concern as far as how long does it take for that form to be reviewed? I mean, clients are waiting for their benefits.
Well, it's supposed to be the counties only have 10 days to make a decision.
But, oh, okay, they're the ones that review the form?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that, okay.
Yes. I mean, there is a review by FIS first. And I think they're supposed to do it within a couple of days.
What's FIS?
That's the EBT vendor.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. And then if the EBT vendor rejects it and says, no, this wasn't a scam, does the county, can they still review it and override that?
They're required to. They
Okay,
must.
okay, okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, let me talk about a few other things then. The next thing I'm going to talk about, I don't have a slide on because it's changing really quickly. And it was something that was supposed to have been taken care of already, and it hasn't been. It has to do with the EBT cards, and it's not really a legal update as much as something practically that is happening to clients that folks need to know about. So about 4 or 5 years ago, the EBT cards, new EBT cards started having a CVV number attached to them. Araceli, I see you. Let me finish this and then I'll come back to you. They started having a CVV number embedded in the card. That's that 3-digit number on the back of your credit card. That's a security feature. It actually is not published on the EBT cards, but it is embedded in the chip on the EBT cards. And it's a security feature that has not until now been turned on. But because of the high incidence of electronic theft of benefits, DSS has decided to turn it on. What that meant was cards that didn't have it, which is cards that are at least 4 or 5 years old. It was about 20–25% of the outstanding cards would be turned off, would be no good. And so DSS, through their vendor in Florida, sent out new cards to all of the people who had cards that didn't have the CVV on it. That turns out to be about 900,000 people. And so those folks have to turn on their cards, their new cards, in order to have access to their benefits when the CVV implementation started, because all the old cards would turn off immediately. The problem is only about 40% of the people who received the new cards have actually turned them on. So there's about 500,000 outstanding cards that haven't been turned on, and all of those folks will not have access to their benefits. We're not entirely sure, actually, when they flip the switch for the CVV implementation, which now is going to be sometime in May, or 30 days after they got the new card. It may be that their old card won't work starting 30 days after they got the new card, that their old card won't work. I'm not entirely sure. The last meeting I had with DSS was somewhat unclear about this point. There's another 30,000 people who had their cards returned as undeliverable. And so what DSS is doing is contacting those people by text message if they can, or calling them if they can, to tell them, turn on your cards, or, you know, the card was returned as undeliverable, what's your address? But for folks that they don't reach, at some point, their old cards aren't going to work and nobody's going to understand why. The cards came in completely unmarked envelopes with almost no information about what was going on. The reason for that was they were afraid that if they gave out any information, the scammers would know that the cards were coming and would steal them from mailboxes. The downside of what they did is nobody understands what has happened. So there's a lot of confused people out there about their cards, and that may be why that they either thought it was junk mail or didn't understand that they had to turn on their cards. The way this will come to you is somebody comes to you and says, I just went and tried to pay my rent and it says my card doesn't work and I don't know why. This is probably the answer. Sometime in May, the CVV is going to be turned on and all the old cards will no longer work. There is one other wrinkle to this. DSS made a mistake in the file that they sent to the EBT vendor. And so the file included folks who have been removed from the CalWORKs assistance unit for whatever reason, who are no longer part of the CalWORKs assistance unit. And those folks could have activated the cards and taken money out of the account. Another reason why somebody would try, in that case, somebody would, you know, try and use their account and would find that all their money is gone and would have no idea why. DSS has not publicized that this error happened, but they did send out a letter to the counties telling people that it happened. They think about 30,000 cards went out to people who should not have received them. We shall see if that's right, but there is a letter from DSS that if somebody has a problem getting these benefits replaced, the counties are directed that for these folks, they should replace the benefits right away. But if there's a problem with it, there is a letter from DSS that I have access to that I can give to people or that I can send out to the group so people have it, that they can show to the counties to show, hey, wait a minute, someone's not making this up. Here's what it likely is. And a couple of questions in the chat. Heather, this is doubling back to the SAR-7 discussion. What does it mean by kicked out? Sorry, I wasn't clear. The county's saying that the SAR-7 is invalid because it was submitted too early, and so the SAR-7 or annual recertification needs to be submitted again. Sorry, I wasn't clear about that. And then a question from Yolanda. Will it be an overpayment if the pregnant client does not provide the doctor's verification within 30 days? I don't think so. I just think the application would be denied or would be terminated because the verification wasn't submitted. But remember, there is also the opportunity to ask for good cause. So if someone just hasn't been able to get to their doctor in 30 days, they can ask for a good cause extension of the time to submit the medical verification. And Araceli, you have a question.
Yes, I do have a question. I had a student who applied for CalWORKs kind of in the middle of the semester. Are they still entitled to receive the standard payment if they're completing their application in the middle of the term, or they're not entitled to receive the standard payment?
Yeah, and we had this discussion yesterday, and so I think there may be a little bit of a difference of opinion here. Unfortunately, I think it's a difficult argument that they can get the supportive services payment back to the beginning of the semester. I know Vicky thinks, and I think, why not try it, that there is an argument that people should get it. Certainly no harm in trying. There may be some counties who are willing to do it, but I think it's a tough argument that counties are required to do it.
Okay.
What would their option be then, Stephen? So let's suppose this is true and my student newly on boards with me and she hasn't purchased her books, you know, so does she put in a separate request for ancillary services for just those books?
I think if they haven't purchased their books yet, they have a much stronger argument.
But they shouldn't. I'm thinking my sort of stance is one of the whole ideas with this was to eliminate all this paperwork and all this verification and all of these delays and to not overthink these things. So it's not like $10,000, you know, to me, it would be just an easy business practice for counties to go ahead and issue it. Now, let's suppose a client qualifies literally on the last day of the semester. That's a little weird, but I worry. I mean, I've mentioned this before in other trainings. SB 1232 was written mostly with the UCs in mind. Their student association participated in writing the legislation, and there was very little input from the community colleges. And we all know what we do different, what we do in the community colleges, the way our semesters run, the way people can enter and exit at different times, and you know, the dropping schedule is different. So I think that a lot of the issues we're having with this is that we're trying to adapt the legislation around the community colleges and how we practice, how our practices are so much different. So I think this is a good point that we should definitely pose this question, Steve, to CDSS. And also, as an aside, I'm working with them and I'm going to put in a library in the association website all of the ACLs, the ACINs, the errata, the legislation, all of the guidance from CDSS. There are PowerPoints from 2 webinars. So it'll be in one centralized location, just as an
great.
FYI.
Thank you. That'll be a great resource to have. Thank you. And I think, yes, let's talk to DSS about it. There's no reason that we shouldn't try and see what we can do. And I see a question in the chat from Andrea. Should the student submit an itemized ancillary request if they enter the program mid-semester? I think mid-semester, again, I think in theory, no. If somebody, if the county takes the position that they will allow it as long as you were enrolled at the beginning of the semester, then they should just get the standard supportive services payment. there shouldn't ever be a requirement to show what you would spend the money on unless you're asking for more than the minimum supportive services payment. But yeah. And I think this isn't a problem for folks who say begin in the middle of a semester and the first thing they're doing is a 4-week or an 8-week class that starts in the middle of the semester. That should be fine because that's when their classes start. That should work. And then there's just going to have to be a determination for that class what it should be considered, full-time or part-time or semester or quarter. That should be fine. The issue, I think, is if somebody is, enrolls in January in school and doesn't start getting CalWORKs until March, can they go back and get the supportive services payment for a period of time that they were not receiving benefits? And I think I think we should argue for it, but I think it's a bit of a tough argument.
Community college students oftentimes, even 8 weeks into a semester, don't have their own books. They borrow books, they go to the library and study at the library. So, and that's one of the things that's a little bit different with us. So I think, I just think that we should clear this with Damien, because I don't think there's anything in the legislation that addresses this. This point when a client becomes eligible. And if you recall, Stephen, I think Legal Services in LA sued CDSS on the SIP rule. If you remember,
oh, yes.
The counties were advised they have to go back and pay if the client was on cash aid, even without a welfare to work plan. So that's what I wonder if what we're talking about right now with SB 32 is 1232 is reflective of that certain legal precedent. So
yeah, Vicki, sorry to cut you off, but I see a couple of other questions and we've only got a minute left. So Andrea, I saw you had another question.
Yeah, it just seems like it's an ongoing conversation. I was just trying to understand that if a student became eligible mid-semester, I understand that they wouldn't necessarily give them the $500 standard payment, but couldn't they submit an ancillary itemized to get something to pay for the books?
I mean, we certainly could argue for that as an alternative. I think this is a discussion we have to have with DSS.
Yeah, okay, got it. Thank you.
And Marta.
I actually just wanted to reiterate what Vicki had mentioned, because we get our students that start mid-semester, and it's kind of like by the time they start and meet with the employment specialist, it's already 2 months into the semester. So yeah, I would like you to advocate for our students to get their funding reimbursed, even if they bought the books or borrowed or used in the library. I still would like to see something like that happen for our students because they are low income and they don't have the money to be buying the books, but they did it anyways.
Well, let's take a shot at it. Let's see what's at least talk to them. We are now out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions that people have, but I'm going to stop the screen sharing and I'm going to stop the recording. But I am more than happy to stick around. So thank you very much. And actually, let me do one more thing. I will, if people have any questions for me, please feel free to email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. I'm happy to talk to folks. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, let me just stop the recording here real quick.